When I was 16 years old, I got my first part-time job. One of my best friends, Andrew, had been working over at Walmart for about 6 months, and one day, he told me that his department was hiring. I jumped on the opportunity because it was hard to find work in my town, especially at my age. He put in a good word with his manager, and I got the job. Andrew and I lived only a few minutes away in the same neighborhood, but the Walmart was on the edge of town, and it was about a 20-minute drive each way. There was a public bus that went there too, but with all the stops, it came out to over an hour each way. That's why we always tried to get a ride from our parents. Neither of us had a car at the time. Didn't always work out because sometimes our shifts didn't match up, but we tried to organize our schedules with that in mind. Sometimes we would end up having to take the bus though. It was a Wednesday night in late June, and both me and Andrew were working until 10 p.m. I'd called home earlier to make sure my parents were still on to pick us up. When I talked to my dad, he said that my older brother was going to pick us up. He'd been away at college for the last year. Since Andrew and I had only been hanging out for that school year, he hadn't met my brother yet. I told him we had a ride lined up though, so he was happy about that. After we finished up for the night, Andrew and I headed to the front of the store to wait. The parking lot was less crowded than usual. It looked like there were maybe 10 cars in the whole lot. I remember feeling a chill in the night air, thinking that I should have brought a thicker jacket, but I thought the wait wouldn't be too long. A few minutes passed, and then I got a text from my brother saying that he had just left our house. That meant that he would be about 20 minutes. When I saw that, I realized that I kind of had to go to the bathroom. Maybe I was also feeling a little cold. In any case, I decided to go back into the store to use the washroom, but Andrew decided to stay out front and wait, just in case my brother came. I told him I'd be right back, and darted inside to the restroom. The washroom was on the far end of the store, probably a 5-minute walk each way, just inside the store. I went, then headed back out to where we were waiting before. When I got back, I saw that Andrew was standing next to a car that was stopped at the pickup spot. I could see him leaning into the passenger seat, and it looked like he was talking to the driver. The car definitely wasn't my brother's. I walked over to them, and when I came up, Andrew turned to me. He asked if this was my brother. Then I looked into the car. It was a man at least 35 years old with curly hair. My brother was 20 years old, and looked nothing like that guy. Less than 5 seconds later, the car took off. Once it was gone, Andrew told me that the car pulled up and asked if he was waiting for someone. He told the guy that he was waiting for his friend's brother. As soon as Andrew told him that, the guy claimed that he was my brother. Andrew was skeptical right away because he was expecting someone much younger. He said that he was going to wait for me to come out before getting into the car, but the man was trying to talk him into getting in. Andrew claimed that at no point did he consider getting into the man's car, but it was pretty chilling that he was trying to coerce him in. Eventually, my actual brother pulled up. It was only a few minutes later, and we were both relieved when we climbed into the car. The ride home was quiet at first, but then we told my brother about the guy in the other car. He knew I was too smart to fall for something like that, but agreed that it was beyond creepy. The next day at school, we told some of our friends what happened as well. It spread through the school, and eventually one of the teachers heard as well. We were encouraged to report it to the police before the end of the day. They called our boss at Walmart first, then they filed a report with the police. I heard that they checked the CCTV cameras in the parking lot, but couldn't get a clear picture of the man or the license plate. As far as I know, that was the end of it. He never turned up again, and I don't know of anyone else who's had a similar encounter. I don't know what he would have done to my friend, or if he was just messing around. Andrew's a pretty big guy for 16, so he doesn't look like your typical abduction target. He's over 6 feet tall, albeit pretty skinny, but still, he would have put up a fight. Who knows what kind of weapons that guy had, though. It could have been the end for Andrew if he made the wrong move there. I would have been devastated. I used to work at Walmart, and I did the overnight shift. This was in 2008, and that location is no longer open all night, but back then, it was. I was 32 years old at the time, and I was also a part-time student. I was doing a certificate in financial accounting at community college. I still had a year to go, so I knew the job at Walmart would be my life until then, at least. The night shift lifestyle wore on me. I never slept a full 7 or 8 hours like most people. My sleep came in smaller naps throughout the day. I don't think it's very healthy to do that, and I was looking forward to leaving it behind. One night, it was around 2 a.m. when I was working. I was mostly stocking shelves, but customers would sometimes come up to me for help. The sales associates that you see during the day did not work nights at my store. or if they were, then there were just a few of them, so I kind of filled that role to some extent. I was working in the health and beauty section with my earbuds in, trying to make the hours pass. That's when I noticed a customer lingering too long in one of the aisles that I was working in. He was a tall, lanky guy, dressed in a way that was nondescript but somehow felt strange. He was wearing a plaid dress shirt, but it was only half tucked in, and his glasses were on crooked. It was like he was dressed respectably, but just a little off. He kept his distance, but it was clear that he was watching me. I could see him peeking over at my peripheral vision. Walmart is a strange place at night. The kinds of people that come in there never cease to amaze me. I witnessed a full-on fight once between two female customers. They messed up one of the aisles pretty bad, and one of my coworkers had to clean it up. Another time, some random guy grabbed a bike from the cycling section and was riding it all around the store. Our overweight security guard was chasing him on foot, failing miserably to stop the guy. It was honestly really funny, but I felt a little bad for laughing. I tried to ignore the strange guy and focus on my work. I finished up in the beauty section and moved on, hoping he'd leave. After another few minutes, I seemed to get my wish. I thought I might have been overreacting, since he was really only lingering for 10 minutes. It was an uncomfortable 10 minutes, but I was just happy to be left alone. I kept working for another hour, then at around 3:30 in the morning, I took my last break for the night. I always took my breaks in the employees' lounge at the back of the store. There was a loading dock back there, and the employees' bathroom was nearby. Then there was a staircase that led up to the break room, which had a fridge and a partial kitchen. There were also some tables and chairs, and a TV that was always on. I pushed the large doors open, and stepped into the back area, and I went to the bathroom, which was on the ground level. I was in there for less than 5 minutes, and when I stepped out, there he was, the man from the aisles, standing between me and the relative safety of the store. He was blocking my way back into the public area. The back was off limits to customers, and his being there was clearly not allowed. What really freaked me out, though, was that it was over an hour since I saw him last. What could he have been doing for that hour? I think he was following me the whole time, but did a better job of staying hidden. I didn't have time to do anything before he started moving towards me. I tried to get away, but he grabbed me by the right arm and pulled me in. I struggled and tried to break free, but he was stronger than me. I started to scream, and as soon as I did, I heard him laughing. I looked at his face, and he looked absolutely psychotic. He began dragging me towards the dairy cooler that was off to the right. I was struggling and screaming as loud as I could, but I couldn't fight him off. When we were about an arm's length from the door to the cooler, one of the security guards ran in and screamed at him to let me go. He still wouldn't release me though, so the security guard came over and tried to wrestle me free. The man was digging his fingernails into my arm as he was ripped away from me. It felt like my arm was going to be torn off, but eventually, I was free. I looked at my arm, expecting blood, but he never broke the skin. It was very swollen though. Once he was off of me, the man ran away. The security guard came over to check on me instead of chasing him. The whole thing was on camera anyway, so the police didn't have any trouble finding him. I was allowed to go home early because I was way too shaken up to stay any longer. It was hard for me to go back to that place after what happened, but I did work there for almost a year afterwards. The day started off like any other Saturday, with my sister Chelsea and I deciding to hit up the Walmart near our house. We needed to pick up some things for our mom while she was at work. Since I was 16, my sister was 17. It was nothing new for us to take care of some errands on our own. We lived in an apartment in a large building complex. It was a busy area of our city, and the Walmart was only a 15-minute walk. We would sometimes take the bus, since we both had a monthly pass, but the weather was good, so we headed out on foot. It was around 7 at night by the time we headed out, and our mom was working the late shift. She wasn't expected back until 11 o'clock at night, so we wanted to do some grocery shopping. That way our mom wouldn't have to worry about it. Most of the stores would be closed by the time she finished work. As we walked through the automatic doors of the Walmart, the cool air spilled out. It was August and it was hot out, even in the evenings. We grabbed a cart and started making our way through the aisles, picking up food and other items on our list. It was during this mundane task that I first noticed a man who I thought was watching us. He was standing at the end of the cereal aisle, his eyes on us. It was hard to guess his age, maybe somewhere in his 40s, with a gray patchy beard and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in a long time. His stare was unsettling, but we tried to ignore it, assuming it was nothing. But as we moved to the next aisle, he was still with us. Trying to keep our cool, we sped up our shopping, hoping to lose him in the maze of aisles. Despite our efforts, every time we looked back, there he was, always a few steps behind. It was clear that he wasn't just coincidentally shopping for the same items. He was following us. When we lined up to pay, that sinking feeling in my stomach worsened as he queued up directly behind us. He tried to strike up a conversation with my sister, asking her name and complimenting her in a way that made my skin crawl. She responded with curt politeness, her body language screaming discomfort as she kept her answers short and avoided eye contact. As soon as we paid, we grabbed our bags and hurried out, hoping that would be the end of it. For a moment, it seemed like he had disappeared, and we allowed ourselves to feel relieved, but that relief was short-lived. As soon as we reached the sidewalk, I looked over my shoulder, and there he was again, trailing us a short distance back. We knew going home was out of the question with him following, and we didn't want to go back to the store because we would have to pass him to get there. It made more sense to go forward. I wanted to call the police, but my sister thought nobody would believe us. I agreed to hold off, but if things got any worse, then I told her I was going to call the cops. We kept walking, and he was still behind us, even though we had taken a few turns. We had also crossed the street, and without fail, the man followed our every step. By then, we were approaching an area that, thankfully, still had some people around. Spotting a convenience store, we made a beeline for it, practically sprinting the last few steps. Once we were inside, we approached the cashier, a young guy who looked to be in his early 20s, and we quickly explained our situation. He offered to call the police for us. We hesitated, not sure if the situation had come to that. Maybe we were overreacting. Instead, we asked if we could wait for a bit, hoping the man would give up and leave. The cashier nodded and told us we could stay as long as we needed. Chelsea and I looked out the front window, but we couldn't see the guy. I was not confident enough that he was gone, though, so we stayed. After another 5 minutes, our stalker entered the store. Chelsea and I huddled near the counter where the cashier was. The man walked around the store for about 2 minutes before approaching the counter. We both moved to get away from him. The cashier was a large guy, about 6'4", and we knew he wouldn't try anything crazy with him there. He stood there in front of the counter for an uncomfortable half-minute before leaving. He didn't buy anything. We stayed there for another 10 minutes, then eventually decided it was safe to leave. There was no way we were walking home, not with a chance of him still being out there. We called an Uber to take us back to our building. Even though we were only a few blocks from home, we couldn't risk the walk, especially because it was pretty dark already. The Uber dropped us off in front of our building. We rushed in and made it through the sliding door to our apartment. Once it closed behind us, we knew we were safe. Our building has good security, with electronic locks and security guards on duty at all times. We didn't go out again that day, nor did we talk much about what happened. I've had other experiences with being followed, but this one was the scariest. In most cases, it's more subtle, but this guy was really persistent, and I'm genuinely scared of what he might have done to us if he cornered us in a dark alley or something like that. I landed my first real job as a cashier at the Walmart near my school back when I was a sophomore. Getting a job felt like a big deal back then, especially since I was the first in my circle of friends to get one. The schedule was manageable, 2 evening shifts during the week and 1 early shift on the weekends. On Thursdays, I would stay until closing, which was 11 p.m., but any other night, I would just stay until 9:30. Anything more would have made keeping up with my schoolwork too hard. I also liked to hang out with my friends a few nights each week as well. Working at Walmart was pretty much what you'd expect. The days blended together, and it was pretty boring most of the time. I didn't like the crowds or the general atmosphere of the store, but having an actual source of income at 16 was nice. It wasn't all bad though. Some of my coworkers were cool, and we had some laughs here and there. The store was right down the street from our high school. It was less than a 10-minute walk, so a lot of people I knew from school would come there. Sometimes to buy things, and some people would just come to loiter and hang out. Angelo and Jeff were 2 guys from my school who seemed to have too much time on their hands. They'd often hang around the parking lot at Walmart, which I never understood. They were 2 grades ahead of me, so we didn't really know each other. They weren't bullies or anything, and they never bothered me before, but I did think they were arrogant. They just carried themselves in a way that made it seem like they thought they were better than everyone. When I came in for my shift at 6 p.m. on a Thursday, they were there at one of the picnic tables that some of the workers used for breaks. I saw them on my way in, but didn't say anything to them. Security would sometimes kick them out, but not always. Later on during my shift, I saw them come into the store through the front entrance. I made eye contact with Angelo, and he gave me a smug smile, then I turned away. About half an hour later, I saw the two of them being dragged out by security, and I could see a police car outside. I watched from my spot at the checkout as they talked to the police. I assumed they had been caught stealing, and they were getting in trouble for shoplifting, but after a while, it looked like the police let them go. After that, I heard from security that they were banned from the Walmart, but that didn't stop them from trying to come back. A few weeks later, they came in like nothing happened. They picked up a few things, then came up to my register, even though mine had the longest line. Maybe they thought that I would look the other way, because I went to their school. To be honest, I probably would have, because I don't get paid enough to rat people out. Security was on them in no time, though. Angelo and Jeff were next in my line when they were caught by our security guard. They were kicked out right there, and not allowed to buy anything. Our security guard was nice enough to let them go without calling the cops, though. I was staying until close that night, which meant that I had to bike home in the dark. The streets were well lit, so I didn't mind, especially in the warmer months. I finished my shift, and as always, I was happy to get out of there. I said goodbye to my coworkers, and then headed out the front door before it was locked. One of the other cashiers was with me, but she went to her car, and I walked to the bike rack. It was around the side of the front entrance, and there was a bright light right next to it on the wall of the building. As soon as I was a few feet from my bike, Angelo and Jeff appeared from around the corner. They were positioned in a way that I would have to go right by them to get out. It was intimidating because there were two of them, and they were also bigger than me. Angelo was holding a skateboard as if it was a weapon, and Jeff was standing next to him, looking angry. "You ratted us out," Jeff said. I denied it, and insisted that I had nothing to do with it. That was the truth, but I knew I couldn't convince them. These guys wanted revenge, and there was no talking them out of it. I was in for a beating if I couldn't get out of it somehow. Instead of going for my bike, I ran straight past them and through the parking lot. If they wanted to beat me up, then I was going to make them work for it. Once I made it to the main parking lot, one of my coworkers was still there. Angelo and Jeff must have turned back at some point, because the next time I looked back, they were gone. I called my parents then and asked for a ride, forgetting my bike. When my dad got there, he could tell that something happened, so I told him. I suspect that my dad called the school the next day, but I'm not sure what he said, because Angelo and Jeff kept their distance from me and never tried anything again. After school that day, though, I went to get my bike, which was left at the Walmart. When I got to the rack, my bike was totally trashed. Both wheels were bent out of shape, while the brake and gear cables were broken, the tires were slashed, and the seat was missing. I'm sure those jerks did it, because I had left my bike there many times and never had a problem. I didn't bother doing anything about it, because I didn't want to have anything to do with those guys again. They were seniors at my school when this took place, so they were gone months later anyway. After they graduated, I never had to see them again.